We're going to talk about how to find the surface area of a sphere. And so what is a sphere? It's just a round object like a ball, something that is perfectly round. And so remember, when we talk about surface area, you can think of it as if you're covering the ball, or you're going to paint the ball. And so, what is the area of that, which can tell you how much paint you need in order to cover that. So that's what you think about when you do area problems. Surface area is really for three-dimensional objects where you're going to be covering the whole thing. So the formula is on the formula sheet, so you don't need to memorize it, but you need to understand it. So the formula, surface area, equals 4 pi r squared. Now remember, when things are written right beside each other, it just means multiplication. So that means 4 times pi times r squared. So 4 we know is a number. Remember what pi is. That's just a number as well. 3.14 is what you can use on the test, and that's also on your formula sheet. But remember, it's just a number. It's 3.14 for the test purposes. And r squared. So what is r? So that's radius. So if you have a perfectly round object, we'll just use an orange, let's say. If this was perfectly round, this is a sphere. If you cut it in half and look at it, you have a circle. And so the r in this formula is the radius of this circle. So if you don't know what radius is, you need to go back and watch the video on circles, radius, and diameter, because it's essential that you know what radius means and diameter means for these problems. So if you don't know that, go back and watch the video on Facebook on circles, radius, and diameter. So the radius is from the center out to the edge. That length is the radius. That's what this radius is here in this surface area. So you can think about, if you slice the sphere in half, it's that length. Remember, diameter is from one end to the other going through the center. So the radius is half the diameter. So if we were given a problem where we have a sphere, we can kind of draw the center of the sphere just with dotted lines. And we're told that the radius is 3 inches. What is the surface area? Well, we just plug it into our formula. They've given us the radius, it's 3. So it's 4 times pi. And what's pi? 3.14. So it's just a number times radius squared, 3 squared. Remember the order of operations. You have to do exponents before you do multiplication. So we have 4 times 3.14. And then what's 3 squared? 3 squared means 3 times 3. If you don't know what exponents mean, you need to watch that video. 3 times 3 is 9. So you plug that in your calculator. 4 times 3.14 times 9, and you get 113.04. So that's the answer to this question. Given the radius, you just plug it in for r. This means 3.14. Make sure you square it. You don't multiply it by 2. That's not what squared means. It means multiply it by itself. So 3 squared is 3 times 3, 9. And you just plug that in your calculator, and you get the answer. Now sometimes they might leave the answers in terms of pi, where you don't actually have to multiply it out by 3.14. You just leave it, they call it leave it in terms of pi. So if you look at the answers and they are in terms of pi, then you just say 4 times pi, because we're not going to multiply it out, times r squared. So it's the same thing. Remember, this is just a number. So 4 times pi, 3 squared is 9. And now to simplify, we can multiply the numbers, right? Multiplication, it doesn't matter which order you do them. So 4 times 9 is 36. And we're leaving it in terms of pi. So it's 36 pi. It just means we're not going to plug in 3.14 in for pi. If you go to your calculator and multiply 36 times 3.14, you're going to get this answer. But this is how it's left in terms of pi. So let's do another problem. And let's say here, oh, and the units are going to be, so this would have been 113.04 inches squared. In surface area, you always use square units, so remember to do that as well. When you see an answer that has squared units in it, you know you should do some sort of area problem. Let's say that they tell us the length of the diameter. So they're giving us the diameter is 8 feet. What is the surface area? And let's say that their answers look something like this. So here, again, they've left it in terms of pi. So that means you don't need to multiply it out by 3.14. You just leave that pi there. So they're telling us the diameter is 8 feet. But we don't need the diameter, we need the radius. So don't plug 8 in for r. The diameter is 8. What's the radius? The radius is half of the diameter. So what's half of the diameter? 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that's what we need for our formula, not the diameter. Be careful about that because that's a place that they can get you. So now we have the radius. We're just going to plug it in. Surface area equals 4 times pi times radius squared, which is 4 squared. So that equals 4 times pi. What's 4 squared? 4 times 4 is 16. So now we can simplify that because we can multiply the numbers together. So 4 times 16 is 64, and we just keep the pi. So it's 64 pi, which means 64 times pi. And so the answer is B, 64 pi. If we needed to know the exact number, not leave it in terms of pi, we would simply multiply it out. 64 times 3.14. Because remember, pi is just a number. It's just 3.14. So when you say 64 times pi, it's 64 times 3.14. And you would get 200.96. And it would be feet squared. We'll do one more problem in which it's presented in a different manner, where they're going to give us the surface area and we have to find the radius. And so this is more of an algebra problem. So if you don't know how to do algebra problems, you need to watch those videos on the Facebook page about how to set up algebra problems and then how to solve basic algebra problems, because they'll come in every aspect of the test. So they're saying the surface area equals 314 meters squared. What is the radius? So now we need to find the radius given the surface area. So again, we just go to the formula. So they're telling us surface area equals 314. So 314 equals 4 times pi times r squared. We don't know what the radius is. That's what we're trying to find out. So that's why this is like an algebra problem. So 314 equals 4 times 3.14 times r squared. Well, we can multiply these two numbers together. So we multiply 4 times 3.14. You're going to get 12.56 r squared. So now how do we solve for r? Remember, if you don't know how to do this, you need to watch the algebra videos. So to get rid of the 12.56, we're going to divide each side by 12.56. 314 divided by 12.56 is 25, equals r squared. But we don't want r squared. It wants to know what the radius is, not radius squared. So be careful about that. You're not done here, because this is radius squared. You just want the radius. So how do we get the radius when we have it r squared? Well, to get r by itself, if it's r squared, you take the square root of r squared. If you take the square root of one side, you have to take the square root of the other side. The square root of 25 is 5. If you don't know what square root means, you need to watch that video. R. So the radius is 5 meters.